Lewis Hamilton and Lando Norris are switching teams for the 2025 to 2026 season. Stay tuned until the end to discover the reason behind this explosive news that's rocked the world of F1. Subscribe only if you want Hamilton to win his 8th World Championship and be crowned as the greatest driver in history. The Formula One universe isn't just buzzing, it's imploding. The tectonic shift that fans, insiders, and rival teams are still trying to comprehend is not merely a driver transfer. It's a complete reconfiguration of the sport's power structure. Forget the statistics. Forget the contract lengths. Forget the PR-approved statements. What's happened is so explosive, so layered in corporate warfare and psychological brinkmanship, that it will take years for the full truth to emerge. Lando Norris, the once cheeky, meme-loving talent of McLaren, is now stepping into the clinical, militaristic world of Mercedes. And Lewis Hamilton, arguably the most iconic figure the sport has ever seen, is walking back into McLaren's headquarters, not as a wide-eyed rookie, but as a man with unfinished business, and more importantly, with power in his hands like never before. What's unfolding is bigger than Formula One. It's legacy building. It's empire dismantling. It's the kind of narrative that threatens to overshadow championships themselves. Behind this double move lies a web of power dynamics so complex, so fragile, it makes the infamous Spygate scandal of 2007 look like a playground dispute. For months, tensions had been quietly boiling inside the hallowed walls of Maranello. Lewis Hamilton, drawn to Ferrari by the promise of revitalizing a legendary team, quickly found himself suffocated in a corporate culture obsessed with hierarchy and ceremony. From the outside, it all looked immaculate: shiny red liveries, charismatic leadership, legacy branding. But beneath that polished veneer was a machine allergic to change. Hamilton didn't just want to drive fast, he wanted to drive innovation. He brought with him an entire team of performance analysts, race psychologists, and software engineers accustomed to Mercedes-level precision. But Ferrari, steeped in old-school tradition, saw this influx of input as intrusion. Subscribe only if you want Hamilton to win his 8th World Championship and be crowned as the greatest driver in history. Behind closed doors, Hamilton was ignored, overridden, and eventually marginalized. According to multiple insiders, Ferrari's decision-making process hadn't evolved with the modern hybrid era. Feedback from drivers, no matter how seasoned, was filtered through layers of middle management before it ever reached the core engineering unit. Hamilton, a driver who thrives on instant iteration and open collaboration, became disillusioned. He reportedly called Ferrari's aero department chronically cautious, accusing them of prioritizing aesthetics and heritage over cold, hard performance. A high-ranking member of his support staff allegedly said that Ferrari treated Hamilton like a celebrity guest, not a cornerstone of development. But the real breaking point wasn't about a failed upgrade package or a mismanaged pit strategy. It came during a high-level development summit before the Canadian Grand Prix. Hamilton proposed integrating a cutting-edge energy recovery module designed in collaboration with a UK-based startup. Ferrari's senior technical advisor not only dismissed it, but mockingly referred to it as British gimmickry. From that moment forward, Hamilton checked out emotionally. Negotiations with Toto Wolff resumed in total secrecy. But this wasn't a nostalgic reunion, it was a strategic recalibration. Subscribe only if you want Hamilton to win his 8th World Championship and be crowned as the greatest driver in history. Toto Wolff, as methodical as ever, understood what the world didn't. He knew Mercedes needed more than raw talent. They needed someone who could lead. Someone with enough political capital to counterbalance the rising influence of manufacturers like Audi and Honda. Someone who could speak directly to Liberty Media, to FIA presidents, to UN sustainability councils if needed. Hamilton wasn't just a 7-time world champion. He was a global ambassador. A walking brand with tentacles in fashion, music, social justice, and emerging tech. Wolff wasn't signing a driver, he was aligning with a movement. And yet, the Norris side of this equation is no less fascinating. His trajectory at Mercedes had already begun to unravel in subtle but significant ways. While the public saw podiums and polished interviews, the internal reality was different. Norris found himself boxed in by a system obsessed with control. His creativity was stifled. His sense of spontaneity, the very thing that had once made him a fan favorite, was methodically sanded down by endless technical meetings, behavioral audits, and psychological performance reviews. He went from being the most naturally expressive driver on the grid to someone who second-guessed every comment, every gesture. Mercedes, for all its excellence, had become a cage. Enter McLaren. But not the McLaren Norris had left behind. This was a new beast entirely. Kenny Dorset, a shadowy figure with a background in strategic counterintelligence and behavioral analytics, had taken the helm. Backed by American investment giants and an AI-focused engineering think tank based out of Palo Alto, McLaren had gone from underdog to wildcard. Dorset had one mission: to dethrone Red Bull by any means necessary. And he saw in Norris not just a talented driver, but a weapon. Someone who could inject chaos into a grid that had become too predictable. McLaren, now fitted with bleeding-edge tech and a hybrid race strategy department powered by predictive quantum modeling, didn't just offer Norris a seat. They offered him a throne and complete creative autonomy. Convincing Mercedes to let go wasn't easy. It involved legal brinksmanship, corporate espionage accusations, and undisclosed financial compensations rumored to exceed €60 million. Some sources even suggest that Norris's contract release included digital property rights, giving McLaren access to parts of Mercedes' cloud-based data ecosystem, something unprecedented in F1. The legality of that deal is still under review by the FIA's ethics board, but no one's daring to stop it. Not now. Not when the sport is riding the wave of its greatest plot twist in over 30 years. Hamilton's return to McLaren isn't just symbolic. It's strategic on every level. The deal includes not just a race seat, but a long-term post-retirement role in R&D and board advisory. He'll have his own innovation lab within the Woking campus, staffed by engineers from NASA, MIT, and former Tesla AI developers. He's already begun shaping McLaren's 2026 powertrain vision, rumored to be a hybrid electrical fusion designed to outperform even Red Bull's next-gen package. He's been spotted in covert meetings with Apple's automotive division and has had hush-hush dinners with Lando's former race engineers. The message is clear: he's not here to retire quietly. He's here to dismantle the very systems that once tried to box him in. And Norris? He's preparing for war. He's moved into Mercedes' Brackley compound full-time, cut all non-essential partnerships, and brought in a personal team of sports neuroscientists and movement specialists. He's studying Hamilton's data archives like a scholar examining ancient manuscripts. He knows the spotlight will be brutal. Every mistake will be magnified. Every win will be questioned. But he's not afraid. If anything, he's more dangerous than ever. What we're witnessing isn't just the changing of the guard, it's a full-blown ideological clash between old-school dominance and next-gen rebellion. Between tradition and reinvention. Between two drivers who, in entirely different ways, are fighting for more than points. They're fighting for control of the narrative. Control of the future. The paddock will never be the same. The politics, the rivalries, the contracts, they've all been scrambled. Audi's entry plan has been accelerated. Aston Martin is leaking talent. Red Bull's leadership is fracturing under pressure. And fans? Fans can't get enough. Social media is ablaze. Netflix is rewriting scripts in real time, and Amazon just greenlit a docudrama called Grid Gods. Brands are queuing up, not just for sponsorship, but to get a seat at the table of this new era. And it all begins next season. When the lights go out in Bahrain, the world won't just be watching. It will be holding its breath. Because on that grid will stand two drivers, one chasing the perfect ending to a story that changed Formula One forever, and the other writing the first chapter of a saga that might just define the next decade. This isn't racing anymore. This is mythology in the making. And every lap will carry the weight of everything that came before, and everything that's still to come. What occurred in the aftermath of the Chinese Grand Prix wasn't just a disagreement, nor was it merely the result of strategic missteps or a driver venting frustration. It was a seismic behind-closed-doors rupture that may mark the beginning of an internal implosion within Ferrari's most ambitious project in recent memory. While the surface-level optics painted a relatively stable picture, Hamilton finishing just outside the podium positions in P4, the reality, hidden behind the paddock's restricted doors, was far more incendiary. What should have been a methodical post-race debrief quickly descended into a confrontational firestorm, exposing deep fissures within the organization's command structure, strategic doctrine, and internal culture. Insiders who were either present in the post-race briefing or closely linked to team personnel described the atmosphere as volatile beyond recognition. Hamilton, visibly seething upon arrival, was uncharacteristically curt, offering no greetings, no acknowledgements, and radiating the kind of tension that made every team member freeze. He took his seat at the far end of the operations room, away from Vasseur and the senior strategists. Without waiting for the debrief's introductory remarks, he interrupted the first speaker, Ferrari's lead tire performance analyst, with a simple but scathing remark: "You had everything you needed in my voice and chose numbers instead." That sentence wasn't just a rebuke, it was a declaration of war. According to a senior engineer, Hamilton's frustration had been building for weeks, fueled by a growing disconnect between his real-time race feedback and the strategy team's rigid reliance on pre-race simulations. The tension, they said, had reached a breaking point during the Shanghai race, where Hamilton had repeatedly warned, via internal radio, that his medium compounds were rapidly losing grip under changing wind conditions and evolving track temperatures. He requested an earlier pit stop, suggesting a switch to the softs to undercut Norris and keep Piastri behind. That advice, however, was overruled by the Maranello-based strategy center, who insisted the data supported extending the stint for 3 more laps. Those 3 laps destroyed the tire window. In Hamilton's words, delivered with ice-cold clarity during the meeting, "You sacrificed a podium for a spreadsheet." Vasseur attempted to regain control, emphasizing the collaborative nature of the team's decision-making process. But Hamilton was having none of it. He stood up, threw down his telemetry notes, and locked eyes with the team principal. "Too many chiefs, no generals," he said. "When everyone speaks, no one decides. You're trying to run a war room like it's a group therapy session." The temperature in the room dropped several degrees. The following 20 minutes devolved into a brutal, unscripted exchange, Hamilton accusing the team of institutional timidity, of fearing bold calls, of being obsessed with predictive modeling instead of trusting the instincts of a man with over 100 Grand Prix victories. Vasseur, in turn, tried to defend the team's analytical model, referencing similar strategies executed successfully in previous races. But that only inflamed things further. Hamilton allegedly responded, "Those weren't races. They were rehearsals. Shanghai was the real test. You blinked." As the argument intensified, Hamilton brought up past examples. He cited the Bahrain hesitation that cost him track position, the Melbourne safety car confusion, and the Saudi qualifying slip-up that forced him into traffic. "I've driven through chaos before," he said, "but I've never been told to trust a system that doesn't trust me." One of the younger engineers tried to interject, referencing delta comparisons from the race simulation. Hamilton didn't even look at him. "I've been in Formula One longer than you've had a driver's license," he muttered. Another engineer, one of the most experienced in the garage, quietly packed up her laptop and walked out, tears in her eyes. She hasn't returned to team meetings since. Others in the room remained frozen, afraid that even breathing too loudly might make them a target. The confrontation culminated in what multiple sources called the single most dramatic exit they'd ever witnessed from a Ferrari driver. Hamilton picked up his bag, scanned the room slowly, and said calmly but with venom, "I didn't join Ferrari to teach amateurs how to compete." Then he slammed the door so violently that a telemetry monitor cracked on the wall. The sound echoed through the hospitality compound. The damage wasn't just physical, it was symbolic. A monitor designed to deliver clarity had been destroyed in a moment of complete breakdown. But that wasn't the end of it. That same evening, Hamilton skipped the traditional team dinner, an unspoken ritual meant to demonstrate unity, even in defeat. No explanation was offered. Attempts by senior Ferrari personnel to reach him via secure messaging were met with silence. The next morning, his personal security team arrived early at the paddock and began systematically clearing out his belongings. Multiple high-value items, his custom-designed seat insert, a backup steering wheel, and his personal simulator module, were discreetly packed into black cases and loaded into an unmarked van. Ferrari logistics staff were instructed not to log the transfer in the team's standard inventory system. One insider whispered, "It's like he's preparing for Exile." Ferrari's internal response was immediate and drastic. A confidential high-priority memo, coded Red Directive Alpha, was distributed to all staff with media access. The language was uncompromising, effective immediately. No team member shall engage in any external communications regarding driver integration, strategy outcomes, or interpersonal developments post-Shanghai GP. Unauthorized disclosures will trigger contractual review and immediate suspension. The scale of the clampdown was unprecedented. Even junior media interns were required to sign non-disclosure confirmations. External vendors scheduled to work with Hamilton on a sponsor shoot in Turin were quietly told to stand by until further notice. Back at Ferrari HQ in Maranello, executive-level meetings were called to assess the damage. High-ranking board members reportedly questioned whether the Hamilton acquisition, once seen as a generational coup, was veering off the rails. Sainz's unexpectedly strong start to the season only added fuel to the fire. There were rumors, whispered in hushed tones down polished corridors, that contingency plans were being drafted, not just for race operations, but for long-term driver alignment. Sainz's camp, previously frozen out of negotiations, was suddenly receiving polite feelers from within Ferrari's sporting division. At the same time, discreet inquiries were made to external drivers under contract review elsewhere. Meanwhile, the media began sensing that something far more serious had occurred. Hamilton's complete absence from post-race media duties, without so much as a canned team statement, sent shockwaves through the paddock. Even Toto Wolff, when asked if he'd spoken with Hamilton post-race, gave a cryptic smile and simply said, "I think Lewis is doing a lot of thinking right now." And then, silence. No Instagram updates. No X, Twitter posts. No behind-the-scenes training clips. Nothing. Hamilton, who usually floods his audience with positivity, resilience quotes, and team-building snapshots, went completely dark. In the social media era, silence is rarely accidental. It's deliberate. It's strategic. And for a figure like Hamilton, it's weaponized. That digital silence echoed louder than any interview could. It said, "I'm not done, but I might be done with you." In a sport built on millimeters, milliseconds, and microscopic margins, Ferrari now finds itself confronting a margin of error it never anticipated, the cost of failing to align the heart of its future with the voice of its present. And as the European season looms, the question haunting every corridor in Maranello is no longer can we win with Hamilton, but rather can we even hold on to him long enough to try? Because when a 7-time world champion goes quiet, it isn't peace. It's the countdown to detonation. What virtually no one saw coming, what not even the sharpest minds in the paddock could anticipate, was that long before the storm at Ferrari erupted into public view, before the headlines began swirling with speculation about Hamilton's dissatisfaction and rising friction within Maranello, Zak Brown had already activated a master plan operating in complete silence. This wasn't a reaction, it was a preemptive strike. A move crafted with surgical precision, initiated months in advance, invisible to the public yet capable of reshaping the very fabric of the sport. Zak Brown wasn't watching events unfold, he was orchestrating the symphony behind the curtain. While fans debated tire strategies and DRS zones, while journalists chased quotes and soundbites, Brown had already started engineering the most ambitious driver transaction Formula One has seen in decades. And the centerpiece of that plan wasn't just any driver. It was Sir Lewis Hamilton, the 7-time world champion, the global icon, the man whose name transcends racing. Back in early March, long before Ferrari's internal chaos became evident, before the tension in the Red Garage became the subject of analysis on every motorsport outlet, Brown reached out discreetly through a trusted intermediary. No press release. No formal talks. Just a whisper passed through the right channel at the right time. The message was minimal, but loaded with subtext. If things fall apart, you know where you belong. No pressure. No pitch. Just a carefully timed nudge toward the idea of a dramatic, poetic return. Because Brown understood something crucial, this wasn't just about a contract or about offering Hamilton a competitive seat. It was about a narrative arc. A return to origin. A full-circle moment that would electrify the sport and reignite the McLaren legacy. And when the situation at Ferrari did indeed implode, strategic miscalculations, radio miscommunications, passive-aggressive interviews, and growing doubts about leadership, Brown saw his moment. He didn't hesitate. The proposal he made next shook the inner circles of Formula One to the core. He didn't just want to bring Hamilton back to McLaren, he proposed a direct driver exchange. Hamilton to McLaren, Lando Norris to Mercedes. It wasn't just audacious, it was unprecedented. A clean two-way swap involving 2 generational talents, the past and the future, in a single tectonic movement. Toto Wolff, ever the strategist, didn't scoff at the idea. In fact, he listened. Carefully. Norris wasn't just a young star, he was the long-term cornerstone Wolff had always envisioned for Mercedes. With George Russell still fighting to deliver consistent performances under pressure, Wolff saw a unique opportunity. But the problem was obvious. Norris wasn't free. He was bound to McLaren by an airtight multi-year deal, protected by a $30 million buyout clause and surrounded by a loyal infrastructure built to nurture his growth. For Brown to even consider giving that up, the deal had to be massive, both in scope and in implication. What followed was nothing short of a covert operation. Discussions didn't take place over email or in paddock hospitality tents. They happened in private jets, anonymous meeting rooms, and luxury hotel suites booked under false names. A shell company in Zurich handled logistics. Non-disclosure agreements were signed before names were even mentioned. All references to the drivers were encoded, Driver A and Driver B. Entire legal teams were assigned to build contracts that couldn't legally be tied to either McLaren or Mercedes until both sides activated them with dual biometric authorization. Drafts were printed once, reviewed in rooms swept for surveillance devices, and shredded minutes later. Every digital communication was routed through hardened servers, with embedded self-destruct timers. It wasn't just confidential, it was borderline classified. At the Miami Grand Prix, the operation hit full stride. On the surface, everything looked normal: team briefings, fan events, sponsor activations. But underneath it all, negotiations accelerated. Zak Brown met with Wolff in a motorhome that had been retrofitted to include signal jammers and noise cancellation walls. A former MI5 consultant was brought in to audit the security measures. Meanwhile, a parallel team of strategists met in London to draft contingency plans. A luxury suite of the Connaught hosted a 4-hour negotiation session attended by 2 legal advisors, a financial analyst, and a behavioral psychologist tasked with assessing how Hamilton might reintegrate into McLaren's ecosystem. On the other side, Mercedes ran side-by-side simulations comparing Norris's driving style with their existing telemetry from Russell and historic Hamilton data. The results were staggering. Norris's precision, adaptability, and mechanical sympathy in long stints under changing track conditions placed him in the top percentile of Mercedes' predictive success models. Still, both teams needed more than numbers. They needed guarantees. McLaren proposed creative options, co-branded content deals, legacy royalties, and even a joint documentary series chronicling Hamilton's return. One clause offered Hamilton the right to curate a custom livery for 3 races per season, highlighting causes or designs of his choice. Mercedes, in return, requested first refusal rights on future McLaren Juniors, access to wind tunnel data in exchange for engine upgrades, and an immediate realignment of sponsorship agreements. Behind every clause, there was strategy. Every detail served a deeper purpose: power balance, market reach, branding synergy. And while all this was unfolding, the outside world remained oblivious. Hamilton continued his routine, calm, professional, composed. But insiders say his body language changed. He began spending more time alone. He skipped a media commitment he'd never missed in 8 years. He was seen dining at a restaurant in Monaco with a former McLaren race engineer. Norris, usually effusive on social media, went silent for 3 days. Then posted a single emoji, adore. Russell unfollowed Norris, then followed him back 24 hours later. Fans called it meaningless. But insiders whispered that these digital breadcrumbs were as choreographed as any press release. Then came what many believe was the defining moment. McLaren's board approved a budget expansion package that would increase their cap spending flexibility through legal gray zones involving driver marketing obligations. Simultaneously, an anonymous donor, believed to be a Saudi tech consortium aligned with McLaren's EV division, offered $40 million to help bridge Hamilton's buyout cost from Ferrari, if needed. That offer was never activated, but it was real. The briefcase containing the proposal, according to one source, required dual fingerprint access and was delivered by helicopter to a remote compound in Austria, where Hamilton was vacationing. Just as everything seemed on the verge of ignition, everything stopped. The night before Monaco, the entire negotiation entered radio silence. Meetings cancelled. Private flights grounded. Legal teams told to pause. Something or someone had triggered alarm bells. Whether it was a leak, a legal block, or a personal change of heart remains unknown. What is known is that Zak Brown left Monaco without speaking to media. Toto Wolff was visibly distracted throughout the weekend. Hamilton, when asked about the rumors, gave a tight smile and said, "Everything happens for a reason." To this day, neither team has confirmed the proposal ever existed. But the effects linger. McLaren's internal dynamics have shifted. Norris has altered his tone in interviews. Hamilton has become more enigmatic than ever. And Toto Wolff? He's begun publicly praising Norris with increasing frequency, while Russell's contract remains strangely unrenewed. What happened between March and Monaco wasn't just negotiation. It was a full-scale strategic battle fought in whispers, encrypted files, and elite backroom deals. It nearly detonated the status quo of Formula One and almost birthed an alternate universe where Hamilton, in Papaya Orange, returned not just as a driver, but as a force of transformation. And Norris, elevated to the silver star of Mercedes, will become the heir to Hamilton's throne. Fans never saw the story, but they felt the tremors. And now they wait, because in Formula One, silence doesn't mean peace. It means something even bigger is still to come. What transpired behind the closed doors of Woking and Brackley was not a mere transaction. It was a meticulously orchestrated power realignment disguised as a driver trade. This wasn't about contracts or calendar dates. This was about influence. About legacy. About rewriting the unwritten rules of Formula One. Beneath the polished surface of polite statements and handshake photographs was a war room atmosphere where every clause was a chess move, every demand was a statement of intent, and every silence screamed louder than 1,000 engines at full revs. It was a transfer that has shaken the very core of the paddock, and its aftershocks are still being measured across the sport. At McLaren, the realization came like a slow-rolling wave that couldn't be held back any longer. Lando Norris, the team's long-term investment, had evolved beyond the confines of the orange garage. For years, he had been their rising star, the embodiment of their rebuild. He endured the growing pains, the setbacks, the underdeveloped upgrades, the strategy misfires. But as 2024 dawned and McLaren's gains plateaued, Norris began asking different kinds of questions. His debriefs became more surgical, his body language less hopeful, his private conversations increasingly pointed. Those within his inner circle spoke of a young man whose ambition had outgrown his environment, not out of arrogance, but necessity. So when Mercedes expressed serious interest, McLaren didn't beg. They bargained. And what they demanded was unprecedented. Not just a financial package. Not just PR concessions. They asked Mercedes to assume the full weight of Norris performance-linked bonuses for the remainder of the season, including escalators linked to pole positions, sprint wins, and championship standings. That could cost Mercedes millions, yet they didn't flinch. But the real shock came with a second demand. McLaren requested real-time access to Mercedes' telemetry systems, specifically, data related to how their power units interact with dynamic race conditions. That includes throttle maps, energy deployment behavior in high and low drag settings, thermal regulation over long stints, and power delivery synchronization across different track temperatures. It's essentially a roadmap into Mercedes' inner sanctum. A gift few believed Mercedes would ever give away. But they did. Why? Because Lando Norris wasn't a short-term hire. He was the cornerstone of their next dynasty. And to make that happen, Mercedes had to go all in. While those negotiations unfolded, another equally seismic storyline began to take shape, one that most initially dismissed as a rumor or nostalgia-fueled fantasy. Lewis Hamilton, the 7-time world champion, the icon, the man who had once burst into Formula One through McLaren's doors and had left for Mercedes in what was once considered the smartest gamble in the sport's modern history. Now, he wanted to return. But not just for sentimental reasons. Hamilton had no interest in a farewell tour. He was coming back to rebuild something. To reinvent something. To rewrite his final act not as a passenger, but as a co-creator. Hamilton's list of conditions went beyond anything Formula One had seen. He asked for, and was granted full, unrestricted, ongoing access to McLaren's design and innovation department. That includes the development bays where carbon fiber concepts are trialed, the CFD labs where future aero configurations are tested in simulated wind tunnels, and the AI-enhanced platforms that forecast tire behavior based on real-world and simulated data. This isn't just influence. It's operational authority. Hamilton would essentially be treated as an embedded advisor with a helmet, blending driver intuition with engineering acumen in a way that's never been done before. And he didn't stop there. The infamous Heritage Clause became the contract's most groundbreaking feature. Under its provisions, Hamilton will co-produce a multi-episode streaming documentary series that tracks his return to McLaren. Not just on the racetrack, but inside the development room, the simulator, the boardroom. He will have editorial input, creative direction, and narrative oversight. Streaming platforms reportedly entered a bidding war for the rights even before filming began. Simultaneously, Hamilton launched a parallel co-branded fashion and merchandise line with McLaren, a hybrid of high-performance wear and streetwear that aligns with his personal brand, which has grown to be as globally recognized as the team itself. But Hamilton's demands weren't just cultural, they were structural. He secured advisory power over McLaren's junior driver pipeline. He'll be mentoring, guiding, and even helping to select the talent that could be representing the team a decade from now. He was also given authority to work directly with the simulator development division, influencing everything from hardware feedback loops to software interfaces and physics modeling. This is no longer just a role, it's an executive-tier influence embedded within a driver's seat. And then came one of the most personal requests. Hamilton demanded the right to handpick his race engineer. Not from the existing pool, but from a shortlist personally curated by team principal Andrea Stella. This is monumental. The race engineer is the driver's lifeline, the voice that guides you through every turn, every pit call, every drop of rain. For Hamilton to choose that person from a hand-picked list speaks volumes about the level of trust and control McLaren has placed in him. Meanwhile, Lando Norris' move to Mercedes unfolded like a silent detonation. No melodrama. No farewell monologue. Just action. Precision. Determination. What few saw were the 3 full days he spent integrated inside the Mercedes machine. From dawn until well past midnight, he was immersed in simulator sessions, feedback loops, data analysis, and team briefings. One engineer said Norris was absorbing terabytes of information like a sponge. When he emerged from the experience, he didn't ask what the next step was. He said, "Let's get started." That's when Toto Wolff knew the decision was already made. Mercedes quickly reshaped their internal systems around Norris' preferences. His grip style influenced the design of the steering wheel for the 2025 prototype. His telemetry overlays were fed into AI-enhanced predictive modeling to optimize tire performance and cooling strategies. He was involved in discussions around the new front wing concept. This wasn't onboarding. This was coronation. Mercedes had found their next alpha driver, and they were building the future in his image. What this all means is that Formula One has entered a new era. An era where drivers are no longer just athletes. They are visionaries, collaborators, and strategists. Hamilton has transformed the role of a veteran into something resembling a hybrid between CEO and gladiator. Norris, once the face of youthful hope, has become the embodiment of silent revolution, a driver who didn't shout, didn't plead, but simply moved into the cockpit of destiny. McLaren, with Hamilton's legacy and influence, are no longer underdogs. They're not building a car, they're building a story. One fueled by redemption, ambition, and the chance to make history in a way no team has done before. Mercedes, with Norris, isn't trying to replace Hamilton. They're trying to evolve past him. They're not recreating the past. They're constructing something entirely new, something built to last beyond a single driver, beyond a single title fight. And through all of this, through the politics, the strategy, the branding wars, the silent negotiations behind closed doors, one thing is clear: the 2025 Formula One season will not be decided on the starting grid. It's already being decided in the shadows, in the briefings, in the simulator rooms, and in the hearts of 2 drivers who are no longer content to merely race. They want to reshape the very world they race in. And they've already started. When the exchange was ultimately finalized, it didn't take place in the spotlight. There were no press conferences, no ceremonial handshakes, no corporate logos on velvet backdrops. It happened in complete isolation. In a concealed floor of a highly discreet luxury hotel in Geneva, one that even the most seasoned insiders rarely mention, a clandestine meeting unfolded. Behind closed doors guarded by biometric security, encrypted communication lines, and non-disclosure agreements, 2 of the most powerful figures in Formula One sat across from each other, flanked by legal advisors, digital encryption experts, and silent strategists. There were no celebratory gestures. Just the clinical click of fountain pens against paper and a mutual glance that conveyed everything. The balance of power in Formula One had just been detonated and rebuilt in an instant. This wasn't a transfer, it was a tectonic event. The kind of maneuver that doesn't just shift team dynamics, but redefines what's possible in the sport. The repercussions began the moment the ink dried. And although the plan had been to reveal the deal after the summer shutdown, fate, or perhaps something more orchestrated, intervened. Somewhere deep within the infrastructure of the FIA, buried beneath gigabytes of logistical documentation, a string of seemingly meaningless metadata tags was exposed: drvr3align/25x and conf_swap_exec_q3. Initially overlooked, these cryptic codes were intercepted by an anonymous figure within the F1 data mining subculture. Within hours, Reddit forums and encrypted Discord servers pieced the puzzle together. This wasn't conjecture. This was real. Something massive had happened behind the scenes, and the sport was seconds away from implosion. Suddenly, the paddock was in uproar. Media outlets scrambled. Journalists began receiving calls from untraceable numbers with scrambled audio clips. Certain PR firms dropped their scheduled interviews. And most telling of all, team accounts went eerily quiet. McLaren uploaded a 4K remaster of Lewis Hamilton's rookie season pole lap at Melbourne without explanation. Mercedes silently removed all references to Hamilton from their media assets. Ferrari's official social accounts went entirely dark for 36 hours. Within internal circles, absolute chaos ensued. Ferrari, long known for their carefully curated image and stringent control over personnel leaks, was rocked to its core. Senior executives entered emergency briefings, while Charles Leclerc reportedly demanded personal assurances from the board regarding the future direction of the team. At one point, a rogue high-level advisor attempted to push a radical clause into Leclerc's 2026 contract, granting him veto power over incoming teammates. The move was instantly rejected, first by Fred Vasseur, then escalated to the Agnelli dynasty, who reportedly overrode the maneuver with a firm final message: the team decides, not the driver. Meanwhile, Hamilton's transformation since the Chinese Grand Prix had become impossible to ignore. A clear shift in demeanor. His statements became more pointed, philosophical, cryptic. Phrases like "the past is a compass," and "some chapters are better rewritten," began peppering his interviews. He withdrew from team briefings early. He left debriefs abruptly. He began traveling with a private entourage again, often arriving at circuits via non-standard travel routes. Insiders claim that Shanghai was where he truly emotionally detached from Mercedes. The rumor? That a behind-closed-doors disagreement over team priorities during that race weekend fractured the trust that had held for over a decade. What's more stunning is what happened in the shadows. Unconfirmed, but highly reliable sources suggest that during the Miami weekend, Hamilton received a custom-built McLaren simulator rig in his Monaco residence. Supposedly hand-delivered by Zak Brown's private operations team. That same week, McLaren filed multiple provisional trademarks for the return project under several categories, including apparel, electronics, and digital content. And on the other side of the equation, Lando Norris doesn't just inherit a race-winning car, he walks into a political minefield. Replacing a living legend isn't an opportunity, it's a crucible. The expectations placed upon him are astronomical, and every telemetry trace, every lap delta, every corner entry speed will be compared directly to Hamilton's ghost data. Mercedes hasn't just given Norris the keys to the fastest car, they've given him the burden of legacy. And around every corner waits a critic, a whisper, a headline suggesting he can't carry that weight. This high-stakes reshuffling isn't contained to drivers. The engineering and technical departments across half the grid have been thrown into a silent civil war. As of now, 6 McLaren staff members, ranging from performance data analysts to chassis designers, are suspected to be in talks with Mercedes. Hamilton's race engineer, who once claimed he would never work with anyone else, has reportedly filed a relocation request. Over at Ferrari, tension simmers. Their head of trackside aerodynamics has gone off radar. 2 senior engineers were spotted meeting with Red Bull Racing's recruitment liaison during the Austrian Grand Prix weekend. This isn't a driver swap. It's a seismic restructuring of Formula One's brain trust. And all of this unfolds under the hypersensitive gaze of the fanbase, which has never been more powerful, more organized, or more unrelenting. These aren't just spectators anymore. They're information operatives. They analyze pit-to-car radio in real time, crowdsource flight path data of private jets, use AI to compare race strategies across years and tracks. One group on X, formerly Twitter, recently published a 56-page predictive analytics dossier tracking the psychological patterns of every driver on the grid. It went viral in under an hour. In 2025, the fans don't follow the story, they become the story. Every element of the sport has become narrative-driven. Race results no longer tell the full story. It's the implications, the glances in the cool-down room, the off-mic murmurs during press conferences, the silent unfollows on Instagram, that create the metaplot. F1 is no longer just performance-based. It's emotion-driven. It's tribal. And every team knows it. That's why branding departments are now embedded with team strategists. That's why telemetry leaks are being weaponized. That's why certain helmet designs carry embedded symbolism now, messages meant for insiders, not fans. And with this new era, every Grand Prix feels like a culmination of months of emotional warfare. When the lights go out, we're not just watching cars race, we're watching dynasties rise and fall. We're watching calculated revenge plays, redemption arcs, legacy reinforcement, and strategic obsolescence. The drivers are no longer just athletes, they're avatars of larger forces. Some corporate, some historical, some deeply personal. Lewis Hamilton isn't returning to McLaren for closure. He's returning to obliterate doubt. To retake the throne not just in results, but in ideology. And Lando Norris isn't stepping up as the next British hero. He's entering the Colosseum, surrounded by shadows of giants, trying to become more than a footnote in someone else's chapter. Meanwhile, Ferrari watches from behind red curtains, knowing one wrong move could turn their fanbase into a global mutiny. Formula One in 2025 is a psychological battlefield draped in carbon fiber and cloaked in secrecy. It is no longer about who is fastest. It's about who survives. Who controls the narrative. Who builds an empire that extends beyond the track and into the consciousness of millions. And for the fans who followed the sport from dusty garages to billion-dollar motorhomes, for those who still remember the sound of V10s and the heartbreak of mechanical DNFs, this is the moment. The one they never expected. The one they can't look away from. So don't blink. Don't scroll. Don't even exhale. Because everything is about to change, and you're not just watching it. You're living it.